Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week, the bass theme week. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. We're checking out songs with really great bass work in them. We're looking at a band called Efecto, which I have never heard of before, but this thumbnail right here is making me excited. We got four-part vocal team with one microphone in front of them. I'm really excited to see what they do with this. It does feature three people here. I hope I pronounced these correctly. Nina Rosa, Ingra da Rosa, and Thiago Kobe. So let's get into this and see what's going on, because I'm stoked.
A árvore quando é cortada, chora e sofre de tal maneira, pois vê que o machado que sangra o seu tronco também é feito de madeira. Reinador, 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 reinador.
Oh yeah, some really fun modulation. Got that call and response going on. Oh, that little guitar lick. I love how the bass and barrier just working in tandem to fill out this low end. They sound so good together.
Que são meus irmãos, que sou eu.
Pra cada tronco um machado, bem-vinda a revolta cresce. Se quem bate mal se lembra, quem apanha nunca esquece. Quem tombou,
Yeah, very cool. I am starting to see a larger pattern here.
pela cor, quem tomou, quem sangrou.
Lots of really neat time and tempo shifts. It's feeling a bit disconnected for me, but we'll see where they take
É
it.
pra quem tombou, tambor vai tocar. Sangue que rigou, pode envenenar. Quilombo ensinou, tá pra anunciar. Quem sempre falou, hora de calar. Quem diz que não é sim, é sim.
It's a roller coaster, man. The highs, the lows.
É sim, é sim. Quem diz e jura que não pecou é sim, é sim. Quem diz e jura que não pecou é sim, é sim.
Eu sei que tem cor, a mão que sangrou, sangrou no tambor de tanto tocar.
Tocar pro senhor,
Tocar pro senhor,
tocar pra sim.
tocar passinha. De que lado que eu tô
De que lado cê tá?
nessa dança? Reinador, reinador,
Oh, beautiful.
a maré tá subindo. Eu tava dormindo, nuvem negra trovejou. Levantar meu povo, foi assim que ela falou.
Kind of going for a rainy day kind of vibe. Drastically different from everything else. And see, that's what I was talking about. In like other videos, having a band member conduct, that kind of thing's what I'm. Oh man, using the side of the drum. That's what I'm talking about, man. You got to use every bit of your instrument. Just very going with the flow. Not really having a direction in that last section, just moving. Oh! Getting kind of genty. Very interesting syncopations going on. Yeah, putting the snare rolls in between. I'll bring that back. I'm not gonna bring it back. Okay. There we go. Oh, the ghost notes, that's what it is.
Quer nada, se tu quisesse paz, ia querer também a liberdade, mas tu tremes só de pensar. Tu prefere o controle dos corpos. Se quisesse paz, ia querer também ficar em silêncio, mas tu é tiro, é porrada, é bomba, é tanque de guerra na praça. Tu quer calar o outro, pra tua voz se destacar ainda mais.
Bring the intensity up.
E mais que o outro, às custas do outro, e quer que o outro não reclame. A tua paz, doutor, é pisar no de baixo e não ouvir o grito.
Yeah, dude, this is fun.
Muito limpo sobre um mar de sangue no assoalho. Tu quer instaurar o caos pra inventar a pílula da salvação. Tu quer os peitos comprimidos pra melhor beber, comprimidos pra dor.
This is so good.
Mas deixa eu te falar uma coisa. O povo, essa massa que tu olha e não vê cara, essa força que arrepia quando chega na central às 6 da tarde.
I love the articulation on certain syllables. It really gives certain words a bite to them. I don't know what she's saying, but there's... It's just so good. Yeah, that goes in the explore later pile. Where has that been? So, let's see. I was vibing with that one pretty hard. We're gonna see what I can remember, because a lot of that was casual listening for me. I picked up on some ideas I want to talk about, but on the whole, it's going to be more of a surface level read. So, let's dig into it. First of all, I just want to talk about the drumming. This is something I absolutely loved. First of all, there's just a lot of percussion in here. We have our drum kit, but we also have a series of other types of drums. We have some auxiliary percussion. We have shakers in there, which is pretty typical for this type of music. Shakers are just such a good instrument, family of instruments that just don't get utilized a lot. It's kind of it's just a bit of a shame. They had a nice white noise that I guess in rock and metal the distortion took the place of. That's a weird analogy. Like I never thought of it that way, but yeah, kind of. Anyways, um, we got some really cool drums in here. I don't know their names, which is pretty awesome. I'm gonna have to go look some of this stuff up later. Um, but when we look at the drum kit player, which I think is the most analogous aspect of the percussion to rock and metal, we see a lot of really interesting techniques going on that we don't see too often in rock and metal. And I don't necessarily mean to compare this to what we typically have on the channel, but I just think it's really interesting to showcase diversity within what we typically have. And that's just a lot of rim usage, right? A lot of drummers tend to go for the drum head, unless we're doing a cross sticking idea or gravity blasts, which use the rim as a fulcrum point but not as a percussive element. But at least the rim does get used there. And cross sticking is when you lay the back end of the stick on the rim and you just kind of pick it up and flatly hit it down on the drum head. And you kind of get a little bit of that rim aspect in there as well. But it has a nice clacking sound to it, I suppose. That's really it, though. Rim usage is just so light, and it's one of the things that I love about marching snare. Like if you've ever watched DCI, which we've done DCI in here a couple times. That's drum corps. They make extensive use of the rims. It is just so good. The whole, I mean, you have one instrument, you have a snare. You have a snare drum, that's it. And you gotta make it interesting. So, you use as much of it as you can. And use the sides of it, use the rim of it. And that's the same thing we're seeing here, right? And I think part of that is just because a lot of this song is on the lighter side. Even when we get to some of the heavier sections, and the more layered, louder sections, there's still a lot of rim work going on to get these lighter hits out of it and keep the song feeling agile and dexterous, very light on its feet. And a lot of that comes from these lighter sounds that they're getting out of the kit. The drum heads themselves are used for impactful moments. They're really there for accent, and that is about it. Um, the one time that we get heavy snare usage, it is ghost notes, trying to make the quietest sound out of the drum head. And so a lot of the percussion on here ends up feeling very light, bright, and upper register. It's a lot of louder clinks and clacks and tinks rather than the punchier hit, the crack, as I call it, of hitting the drum head of the snare. But this also, bringing up the idea of timbre, or not timbre, pitch, also kind of loops back into the auxiliary percussion. There's so many drums on here. We have a bunch of hand drums. We have that really large drum. The dude had a mallet and he kind of had it angled away from him and hitting it with the mallets. A lot of this stuff tends to have that wider reverberant sound that we would typically use the bass kick, the toms, and the snare for. And so those sounds are already being created from other percussionists in the band. It makes sense for a drum kit user to use an aspect of the drum kit that those drums don't have, which is metal. A lot of those were made out of what looked like wood. Um, yeah. And so having the metal aspect of the drum kit allowed them to get more sounds out of it. And some of these sounds do kind of align themselves with the cymbals, which are also metal and hit with a drumstick. But there's just a lot of little micro pitch differences, I should say, that they can get out of them that makes it almost seem like a melodic instrument once you realize what each of the different parts of the drum kit you can hit, not just the heads themselves, and what all of them sound like. and really being able to craft these melodic elements that have these strong essences of groove to them. And the drummer's just has such a mind for it. It is a joy. It is a blast to listen to this drummer go to work. I don't think there's a single section in here where I was thinking, man, the drummer's kind of slacking a bit. Everything was just infectious. If it wasn't infectious, it was ingenious, and it just such a good job. Um, Vocals. I don't think we could not talk about the vocals. There's so much vocal work in here. It is in Portuguese, and sorry, I have the lyrics pulled up and translated. There is a lot of them. Now it's an 8-minute song, 8.5-minute song, and there's little downtime for vocal work. And there at the end, after we did have a bit of an instrumental break, we went into spoken word, or even maybe a little bit of rap. It is very quickly delivered. However you want to look at that, like I said, spoken word or rap, and it probably did about 30% of the lyrics just in those final two stanzas. So, yeah, there's just a lot of vocal work in here. And I love the variety of it. We kind of start off with this pattern of quietly bringing in a little bit of speaking or singing, raising the volume and giving it more punch and character, and then doing call and response between the vocalist and the group vocals, the choir, we can call it that. We started back over on this, and we went back to a different vocalist, started quiet, grew to more character, and then did call and response. So this was really neat. We did this idea a couple of times, and I think it's sort of just the way that a lot of these vocals are crafted is that they're designed to be understood possibly as group vocals. These are not lines or ideas that are told by a singular person. And I'm kind of hoping when we get into the lyrics, we'll see stuff like this. But it could also just be cultural as well, where group vocals like this are just very prevalent and standard. This is the normal way of crafting vocals. So I don't know. Like I said, we'll get into the lyrics later and see how that works. But I do love this idea that we very rarely have a solo vocalist. There's either harmony going on or call and response, something going on with multiple vocal ideas. I think it was only there at the end with the spoken word hip hop idea, the rapping that, not hip hop, rapping that was a solo vocalist for an extended period of time. But the vocal work, the two primary singers, the group vocals, the harmonies, everything was just spot on. This was a joy to listen. I'm going to say that a lot because this was just a blast. But this was sonically pleasing, frequently on the harmonic and melodic areas. Now, there is another group of instruments here. It kind of rounds out the rest of our melodic aspect. They don't show up all the time, but they do show up frequently enough. And that's our horn section. We didn't have a trumpet. What was the older dude playing? We did have a bari sax, we had a flute, we had a clarinet. Oh, it was a trumpet. But that was the wrong person. Who's the other dude? Oh, an alto sax. Okay. I was like, I was like, there's a trumpet, but that's not the person I remember playing it. I'm parsing through the video again. Volume off, but just wanted to snag a picture of that. So yeah, we have two saxes. Looks like an alto and a bari, trumpet, flute, clarinet. Clarinet is such a gorgeous instrument. It's utilized so well here. So the instruments are sort of secondary to the vocals in that it's difficult to talk about them without having spoken about the rhythm section yet. The bass and guitar. So the horn section's job primarily through here is to accentuate melodic ideas in the rest of the band. In the vocals. They do have a few of their own lines that sort of embellish what's happening or augment what's happening, but for the most part, they're played in tandem to support the vocal harmonies and melodies. I absolutely love this method of playing. I wish that we had had a little bit more interconnectivity between them, but there's so many vocals, not just in the amount of vocal work, but also the fact that there's four vocalists in here, five by the time we got to the end of it, right? The group vocal shots, or the group shots of the vocalists near the end had five of them, if I remember correctly. There just isn't a lot of room to put more emphasized instruments in there. So it's just a really nice balance, I suppose. But I would have liked to hear just a little bit more play between them. But I understand why they didn't. That would have been a task, both in composition and in production. And man, this production was clean too. We'll have to talk about that. Or maybe that note right there is enough. I don't know if I have a lot to say on it. It is just clear. Everything is easily heard. And then we have the bass and the guitar. The guitar I love in that it's sort of a textural instrument. It plays a lot of jazzy ideas, very rhythmic oriented. Uh, it has chords that it plays often, but the chords are not as important as sort of the rhythmic ideas that it represents and the way that those rhythmic ideas play off of what the drums are doing, which is just such a jazzy way to write a guitar line. Very different from the lead oriented stuff that we see in rock and metal. Now, the bass is interesting because this is bass week, and I was trying to pay a little bit of extra attention to it. The bass is just a solid home instrument. They lead the band. If I remember correctly, the bassist was also the one who counted off when they came back in from the bridge. So, yeah, the bass being the leader of the band makes a lot of sense to me, because this is done in a very Yep, it was the bassist who's counting people in. All right. The bass is done in a very jazzy manner, in which case it is the leader of the band. And this is something we've talked about in other jazz reactions. The bass's job in jazz is to both lead the song rhythmically and chordally, harmonically. There's a lot of walking bass lines in here. There's a lot of forward momentum and movement in the bass lines. There aren't a lot of ideas where the bass just sits on a single note, rides a pedal tone, or anything like that. The rhythms also change up, but are usually fairly uniform in order to create either a pulse, a general pulse for the song that follows the time signature, or a groove that the entire song is working around, in which case the drums augment that as well, and they work together as a team to create this feeling, this groove. And so in this case, the bassist is extremely important and very well done. There's a lot of really nice lines in it, but it's not a technical element. And this is really cool because that means that this week, if we include First Fragment honorarily into Bass Week, we have a fantastic divide between bass as a lead instrument and bass in technical proficiency, and seeing a week of exploring how the bass can be used in two different dynamics and still be worth focusing on for the week and talking about. I don't think it is a... No, I don't know where I'm going with that. And so when we look at it from this angle, right, I think at the end of the day, I would classify this as prog rock. It has a lot of influences, though. It's not just straight prog rock like we would expect from that description, but possibly maybe pushing over into jazz fusion with some... I speak Portuguese. Brazilian influence, Brazilian cultural, Brazilian music, folk, Brazilian folk. I don't know how to word that, but I hope you guys are getting that right direction. I think I'd wager they're from Brazil, given some of the ideas that they're presenting here. And also kind of based off the language, which kind of narrows things down a little bit. And so we have prog rock and jazz fusion, which is kind of the same thing, but at least in my mind, they're very different. Jazz just in general, and this Brazilian folk stuff all being worked into this to create a fascinating compound genre right here. We have the rhythm foundation of jazz, where the bass leads the band, the guitar is more rhythmic oriented, the drums are there to help create the pulse. The big band is there to interestingly do accents. In traditional big band, your horns will be doing the melody playing, but here the melody is all regulated to the vocalist. So what they gave the horns is what the horns typically play during solo sections, usually at the end of a solo, to introduce, well, to sort of wrap it up and introduce possibly the next soloist. These little stinger ideas, ornamental concepts. They don't necessarily take attention away from the lead element, but they do sort of indicate to the listener, hey, we're going to be moving somewhere else right now. All right, here's a little punctuation to the end of this idea. And so that's also a very jazzy thing, but almost everything to do with the rhythms and the vocal work, the way that they utilize multiple vocalists is all very folk or cultural to me. And it is just this really great communal style of telling a story or singing a song. And it all comes together into something that is just, like I said, just beautiful. It all comes together so effortlessly, too, and it is just phenomenal. And I think that's going to be my big reading on this. The big takeaway is that they have merged modern rock or jazz with some of their traditional music from their area and found a way to really bring it together in a way that works. That I think people who enjoy the traditional music might enjoy, as well as people who might come from a rock background or a jazz background could come to this and also enjoy it. And it just finds this fantastic middle ground. And I don't know how they did it. I don't have an emotional read on this. A lot of the time I was just digging the technical work of all of it. There's so many moving pieces here. It was really difficult for me to just let loose and explore the emotion. Oh, one other thing. Let me take a drink first. One other thing I wanted to touch on real quick is modulation, which I think is going to come from the cultural music side. Although prog rock is also heavily known for this, there are so many time signature and tempo changes in here that are sometimes smoothly moved into and sometimes rigidly just a harsh transition to the next idea. But it almost seems like they're not transitions, right? Like during the vocal section, we start out kind of slow and quiet. Usually I think we started at a 3 pulse, and then we move to a 4 pulse that's a little bit louder. And then when the whole group comes in, we stay in the 4 pulse, but we move to a faster tempo. And it all just feels very natural, almost as if you're not supposed to explore it as the 3, the 4, then the speed increase, but that this is the verse. The verse just naturally moves like this. You're not supposed to explore the pieces of it. You're just supposed to understand it as a whole. So when we repeat it and we see the same pattern, we're not supposed to look at it on a smaller level. It's a macro idea. And it's really interesting from that viewpoint. I can't see it from that. I'm so used to digging into the minutia of music and exploring the little parts that I have to see it as the time signature shift and then the tempo shift. But like I said, it almost feels like that section's not supposed to be explored that way. It's not 3 distinct sections. It is the one section. It is the verse. The way that the metric modulation that goes on in it is just how it's supposed to be. It's not something to dig into and figure out how it works. It just is how it is. You got to feel it out. And I like that approach to it. I don't know if that's really what they're going. Like I said, that's how I feel about it. Um, I like that approach conceptually. It's just really hard for me to wrap my mind around it. But we kind of see that in a lot of places where shifts don't really make sense in the moment to moment. But when you look at things in the larger picture, like, oh, okay, kind of makes sense that you did that now. Um, they're just all over the place though. There's so many little shifts. And the thing is sometimes they are little, like 10 BPMs faster or slower, just to get a little bit of that pulling back, the stretching out of the song, or just to get a little bit more energy moving forward, like the rubber band snapping back into place. It gives the song a lot of personality, a lot of character. It never feels rigid. It doesn't feel containable. It feels like the song is its own beast, and they're barely hanging on to make it work. And when the song feels like it wants to change, they all change with it. They just go with the flow. That's the visual I get out of listening to this, which is fascinating. I'm curious. Well, let's dig into it. I'm curious what the lyrics are. Yeah, this is. This is a lot. There's like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of lyrics here. This is so good though. The opening stanza I think really sets the stage in an interesting way. It says the tree when it is cut down cries and suffers in such a way for he sees that the axe has bled his trunk. It is also made of wood. And so this concept of wounding someone who is like you, bringing pain and suffering to somebody who's just like you, or even utilizing it in more of a direct translation, that people are utilizing other people as tools to harm other people, that those in control are forcing the ones under them to battle it out for their entertainment or um, for their needs. Even if we look at it from a capitalist view, where the people in power need the workers on the bottom. So they have them fight each other out so that they don't fight the people at the top. Almost seeing them as tools to ensure their power. All that comes right here from this opening stanza. And from there, we continue to look at ways that revolution is built by recognizing that my suffering is the same as your suffering, that the people you stand shoulder and shoulder next to are your brothers and sisters, not the ones you should be fighting with. Well, I should say you should be fighting with them, not fighting with them, right? um, and so we have some really interesting ideas here. Says, I saw the king's light. I lived to shine the king's sword that wounds the slave, the servants, and the commoner, who are my brothers, right? So my job is to make weapons that hurt my people, right? That allow the ruling class to bring pain to who I am, right? I'm also a commoner. I'm also a servant. And recognizing this injustice and deciding that it's that it's over. We don't need kings anymore, right? And so we kind of get this idea. Says later on, lift up my people. Those were the words that she heard. Rise up, my people, for captivity is over. And from here, we move from this metaphorical idea of slaves, commoners, kings, um, a lot of this medieval imagery, towards something very blunt. If you didn't catch on to the metaphor yet, our rapper at the end of the track is starting to spit some bars in a more straightforward sense. It says if you wanted peace, you would also want freedom, but you'd tremble thinking about it. You just want to control bodies. If I wanted peace, I would also be silent, but you're shot, you're beaten, you're a bomb, it's a battle tank in the square. You want silence for others, for your voice to stand out even more. You want to have more than others, at the expense of the others, and you want them not to complain. Your peace is to step on the one below you and not hear the scream. Just, that is so good. I think the only time, and see, this was also what I was talking about with the enunciation here, that I don't know what word specifically the vocalist was emphasizing, but there was this bite to specific syllables. And I think this anger is ringing through here, where most of the track was very calm with our vocalists and harmonization and the 4 to 5 vocalists all crafting these beautiful harmonies going on. All of it wrapped in metaphor, right? This is more direct, this is more blunt, and so the language also needs to reflect that. After that very visual idea, your piece is to step on those below you and not hear their screams. Says you want no fucking peace. You just don't want to be bothered. The only time there's a swear in here, and it is right there, and I think it is well deserved and is exactly how I like to use swears myself. It is designed for emphasis. Its inclusion should bring attention to the sentence, and right there it does, and it speaks to the absurdity of it. All you talk about is peace. You don't want peace. In fact, you want the opposite of it. I need to emphasize this so much to show that it's not just peace that you don't want, despite you saying it. You actually just want control. You don't want to be bothered. It says you want order. You want a clean rug over a sea of blood. You want to create chaos and then invent the pill for salvation. It is just biting line after biting line. It is so good. And it ends. It says, well, we were forged in chaos. And tell me, which one of us is afraid of that chaos? I'll let you know it's you. It says, we were born in this pain and suffering. We can enact it on you too. We can bring you down to our level. It says, we're not afraid of this. We were born in this. You're the one who's got something to lose. Just so good. And I think it's really interesting how the lyrics themselves are so aggressive at this point. And we move from the vibrant element that works very well, the vibrant metaphor that works well with the vocals at that point, the harmonized vocals, the call and response, this group idea, and we move to this singular voice. And we shift from singing to rapping, and the the lyrical style also shifts here in a way that helps emphasize this specific message. I love how it does this. Now, the music, I don't necessarily think moves in this direction, but honestly, I can't remember the vibe of the the last 20% of the track. I just remember grooving to it real hard and enjoying the rapping. I thought it was very well done. But there were still harmonized vocals here. I don't know. I'd have to go back and listen to it. Musically, I think that this chill, laid back jazz fusion meets folk kind of idea works well with the metaphorical idea of the king and showcasing how those on the bottom caste, the bottom class system, get utilized by those on the top to bring harm to those at the bottom again. I think that all works really well, but I'm not 100% sure on the rapped section if that works well with the music. I remember the music being awesome. These lyrics and their delivery are awesome. I just don't remember if they were as cohesive as the rest of the track was. But yeah, just like I've already put this off to the side. I said I put this in my need to check out pile. I'm completely sold now that I've seen the lyrics. This is just phenomenal work. So those are my thoughts on what is this? Trovoada by El Efecto. I always want to say Effectivo, and I don't know why. El Efecto, Trovoada. Let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy this? Was there anything that stood out to you? Anything you'd like to add on to what I said, or correct me on, or just give me your own perspective? Let me know that stuff down in the comments. Above the comment section is a description box. In there, you'll find a link to Linktree. You can find my music, a link to the Discord server, ways to support the channel, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. All right, we have two more videos for today. Creator request, a special selection. Tomorrow we'll have an album review if you're not interested in either of those. Although I highly suggest the creator request, if nothing else. We always get some really cool things in that program. Sunday, if you didn't see the message, there is a live stream that'll be public for everyone. I'm taking live requests. I have 3 tracks I need to get through, which will probably take up about 30 to 40 minutes. And then the last hour and 20 minutes of the stream, like I said, live requests. Everything's going in a spreadsheet and they'll be randomly selected. So even if you come late, there's still a chance that your request will get taken. It'll be from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. UTC. Yeah, that's right. It's a 2-hour stream. So yeah, if you're interested in that and are available to join, please do. And then Monday we start next week's theme. All right, this has gone on long enough. Remember to be critical, not cynical about the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.